Last night, I was sitting in a room with about 50 people, and somebody asked a question that honestly stumped the room. During an event, a guy just put up his hand and asked simply, "How do you switch off ambition?" The room went quiet. He explained himself a little. He said he had a wife and a son and another kid on the way, and he wants to succeed. He wants to build something real, but he's scared, and I think generally scared. I think he's scared that if he keeps chasing the way he's been chasing, he's going to win at work and lose everything else. Lose the fatherhood part, lose the being present part. And sitting there listening to him, one thought just kept coming back to me. I don't think the answer is switching off ambition. Maybe the answer is just moving the target. Because in my experience, highly driven people don't just stop being driven. What they do, what the best of them do, is either aim that drive at something worthy, or they let it burn right through the things they say matter to most of them. That's what this episode is about. So let me give you a little bit of context. The question was directly asked at Chris Williamson. He runs Modern Wisdom Podcast, one of the most respected long-form shows out there right now. But this wasn't a big venue. No stage, no production, no lights, just a small room, about 50 people. And Chris was talking honestly for a while before opening it up for questions. And what I really appreciated about the atmosphere was that it didn't feel performative. Nobody was trying to sound clever or get a clip. People were actually wrestling with real things, real questions, real tension. And then that one came. How do you switch off ambition? The whole room felt it because almost everyone there understood exactly what was sitting underneath this question. On the surface, it sounds so simple, right? But it's not. Because the guy asking it wasn't lazy. He wasn't looking for permission to coast. He clearly had drive and standards. He had something pushing him forward. But his life is changing. A child in the way changes things. And he was asking something that a lot of high-performing people quietly carry. If I keep chasing the way I've been chasing, what will it cost me? Not financially, but personally. And I see this tension everywhere. I see it in entrepreneurs, athletes, first responders, doctors, operators. Because the same traits that make someone exceptionally good at their job can make them completely absent where life actually happens. Chris gave a very thoughtful answer. From what I remember, what he said was something like this. When people build enough financial security, money then eases and anxiety eases, the pressure underneath that ambition starts to reduce. And with less pressure, things feel different. And look, there's a lot of truth in that. Financial stress drives behavior. When someone is grinding in survival mode, a lot of ambition comes from that pressure. Remove it and life generally changes. But sitting there, one thing kept nagging at me. So I really wanted to raise my hand and answer that question. I kept thinking this question was bigger than the whole entire room. Because I don't think that that's what this man was actually asking. He wasn't asking, how do you remove financial stress? He was asking something way deeper. He was asking how to stay ambitious without losing his family in the process. And those I think are two completely different problems. For some people, ambition is temporary. It's not a phase. It's not something that arrived because life got hard and it will leave when things get easier. It's simply wiring. Some people just don't wake up thinking about improvement, about standards, about what's next, about getting better. You can't really switch that off. Trying to switch it off is like trying to change how you're built. So the real solution isn't killing the ambition. It's aiming it somewhere worthy. That's the thought that sat with me the whole entire drive home. Move the target. The clearest example I keep coming back to is Kobe Bryant. Everybody knows the stories, right? 4 a.m. workouts, film sessions nobody else showed up to, obsessive preparation that most people couldn't sustain for a week, let alone for 20 years, right? For his entire career, his ambition had one direction: becoming the best basketball player who ever lived. And by almost every measure, he got there. But ambition at that level always costs something, right? Kobe knew it. He talked about it all the time. But when he retired, he talked about it. And here's what I find interesting. Ambition didn't go anywhere. It just moved. He poured that same intensity into being a dad, into mentoring the next generation of athletes. Same engine, different direction. I think Tim Grover's work explains something really important about why this matters. Grover trained Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, amongst many others, but not just trained them. He understood how they were built at a psychological level. And in his book, Relentless, he breaks performers down into 3 categories: coolers, closers, and cleaners. Your coolers are solid, right? They do their job well when things are going super smooth. Closers step up to the pressure. They are the kind of people that you want when the stakes are high. But the cleaners, they are a different thing entirely. Cleaners don't need motivation. They don't need someone to get them fired up or remind them why it matters. Discipline isn't something they have to find. It's just the way they operate. They're obsessed with mastery. They're always looking at what can be better, what can be sharper that they haven't figured out yet. They don't feel ever finished. And if you're listening to this right now, there's a decent chance you recognize something of that in yourself. But here's what Grover says that people don't talk about. When somebody is built like that, when they're wired for obsession, everything else in their life tends to get whatever energy is left over. And think about what that actually means. The job gets your best hours. The job gets your sharpest thinking. The job gets the version of yourself that is actually fully awake and fully switched on. And then home gets what? Well, the family gets what's left, right? The relationships get the leftovers. And not because you don't love them, and not because you don't care, but because the ambition engine has only ever been pointed in one direction, and it runs constantly. That's the hidden cost Grover is describing. And that is exactly what the man in that room was afraid of, without quite having the language for it, I think. The cleaner mentality is genuinely powerful. It produces extraordinary results. But without intention about where that obsession is aimed, it will consume your whole entire life. Until one day, the career is full, and everything else feels empty. Now, I have seen this in my own world, working in EMS. You come across incredibly capable people who show up when everything is falling apart, people who carry enormous pressure and handle it. But sometimes that reliability, that total dependability exists everywhere except at home. Not because they stopped caring, but because the drive was always aimed outward. At the job, at being competent, at being the one people count on when things go wrong. And nobody ever stopped to ask, am I aiming this at the right things? The Stoics were sitting with the exact question thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly about ambition, but the Stoic version wasn't about status or recognition or how many people knew your name. It was about becoming something worthy of responsibility, better judgment, better character, better in service of people around you. Ambition aimed at something that was actually worth building. And this is exactly where this connects to what we started this. The people listening to this, I know who you are. You're not passive. You're not drifting. You're just carrying responsibility. First responders, military, leaders, business owners, parents, people whose decision affects other people. People who know what it means to show up when things count. And when you live like that long enough, ambition just becomes part of your identity. You want to be competent. And you want to be strong. You want to be the person people can depend on. But the world rewards only one type of ambition very loudly. Professional success. That comes with money, promotions, and recognition, right? And those things really matter. I think generally matter. But if ambition only ever points there, something starts to erode. The present, your marriage, your fatherhood, friendships, the version of you that the people closest to you actually need. The challenge for people like us isn't about becoming ambitions. We already are. The challenge is making sure that that ambition is same where it actually belongs. If you felt something when I described what that guy asked, here's where I've landed on. Don't try to switch it off. You probably can't. And honestly, you probably shouldn't. Ambition build your discipline. Ambition build your standards. Ambition build the life you're now responsible for. The real question was never, how do I stop being ambitious? The real question is, what is my ambition actually in service of? If it's ego, it'll cost you, eventually. That's almost a guarantee. But if it's aimed at something real, family, responsibility, becoming someone worth depending on, then ambition stops being the problem and it becomes the engine. So don't turn it off. Move the target. Make sure what you're chasing is actually worth carrying. Hope you have a good one. Thanks for listening.